Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. Today I would like to begin with a question. What have the Romans ever done for us? Let's begin from the roads, shall we? To begin this video I would like to say something really exciting, so please hold on tight. This is exciting stuff. I've got some new announcements for some videos that I'm going to make soon. So first of all, on Tuesday I'm going to make another interactive video. As you've noticed, I've been making one interactive video each week. So this is what I'm going to do with the channel from now on. One cultural video and an interactive video, so 2 videos every week. So I've already made the one Roman versus Viking and Roman versus Samurai. If you haven't watched that, I will just leave a link down below. It's really good fun, so please click and have fun, enjoy it. The next one is going to be Samurai versus Ninja, and it's going to be lots of fun. I'm going to put a lot of possibilities, so this time not only the choice of warrior but also the choice of gear. Secondly, we're going to have some really interesting historical reviews and evaluations of video games. So in particular I've chosen 3 games. So these are going to be the Dark Souls series, which evaluate the armors and equipment and swords and weapons in that game. We're going to have an evaluation of The Witcher 3 and Rise, Son of Rome. So let's begin the presentation. We all know that the Romans were magnificent road builders and constructors. However, one thing that often people ignore is that the Romans were in fact not the first civilization to start building roads in the Italic peninsula. Before the Romans, the Etruscans were building roads, and as a matter of fact, the Romans actually made use of some of the roads that were built before by the Etruscans, building their own roads over them. The substantial difference between Roman road building and Etruscan road building had to do with the materials used, the kind of rock. As far as the Etruscan roads were concerned, they were mostly made of tuff, whereas Roman roads were made of flint, which was harder and sturdier. I think you must have all noticed by now that Romans loved overcomplicating things, and they loved dividing everything into categories and subcategories. So they did that also with roads. But there was also a practical reason why they did that, and there are lots of different types and diversifications of roads. Now the first concept that we need to keep in mind if we want to understand things clearly and remember them is that there were mainly, let's consider first, 2 different kinds of roads. We have paved roads and dirt roads. And considering going a little technical here, for my Italian audience, these would be lastricate and terra battuta. Now when we talk about paved roads, we're talking about consular and praetorian roads. These amount to around 100,000 kilometers of roads. But dirt roads were also as impressive, as they would amount to almost 150,000 kilometers of roads. Now, terminology such as praetorian and consular can get somewhat confusing into the minds of those who were not deeply into Roman history. Now, for this video I will have to give for granted these offices because honestly speaking, they would need a dedicated video, which I will make. Alright, now that we have assessed all these things, let us move into our next diversification, our next category. We've got vie or vie and strata. Even for English speakers, you will notice this similarity between vie to way and strata to street or Straße in German, because this is where they come from. However, in Roman times, these terms would be very distinctive, so you could not use them interchangeably. The vie would be roads that would begin in Rome and go outside the city and would go to provinces and other regions. Strata, instead, would be roads built inside towns, settlements and cities. The term strata comes from the word for layers, which even in modern Italian is strati, because they were built in many different layers. And I will go into details on how Roman roads were built towards the end of this video. There were, however, many other subcategories. For instance, in order to be categorized as vie, these roads would have to be 5 meters large, so that 2 wagons going opposite ways could pass at the same time, simultaneously. Now this is interesting because words such as carro, which means wagon in modern Italian, kind of remind us English words, and that's where they come from. For example, the British English word carriageway. Again, carro, carriageway, or the Italian word carreggiata. The next one is the actus. Actus were smaller roads, normally half as large as the vie, and you could not use a wagon to cross them. So you would either have to go on foot or on horseback. Smaller than that were the iter, that you could not use animals to cross, but you could only either walk or use litter. The next one is the semita. Semita was basically, it comes from the conjunction of the word semi, so kind of almost half with this meaning, and iter. So it's again an even smaller iter, semita. Next in line, and one of my favorite I have to say, are the callis. The callis were narrow roads and paths which would lead onto mountains and hills. Another diversification is that always Praetorian and consular roads, which are named like this depending on whether they were built by a praetor or a consul, were considered public roads, whereas private roads were called agrarii. So how were the roads built? And most of the times you would have the inspection of an architect or engineer. After the architect we have the agrimensori, who were specialized engineers who needed to spot the precise points where the road was supposed to pass. In order to mark these points they use poles. Next one in lines were the libratores, who using plows would dig the soil. Normally this digging was down up to 60 centimeters, but occasionally also 2 meters of depth depending on territory. Outside Italy and in foreign lands, often this kind of work was done by legionaries, although occasionally legionaries did give a hand also within the Italic peninsula. And according to Latin writers, although it may sound a little strange to think and imagine, that the legionaries would use as tools of construction and digging their own swords, the gladius. Now, after digging the hole on the ground, they needed to fill it with different materials. Although we have to consider again that the filling would depend on location, area, territory, weather, many other factors and variables, we will now consider the most standard way of filling. The deeper layer was called statumen, and it was made of clay and rocks. The second layer, called rudus, was made of stones, broken bricks, sand, all mixed with lime. The third layer, called nucleus, was made of stone chippings. The final covering, called summum dorsum, was made of polished stone plates laid on top of the nucleus. These polished stones were actually really smooth at the time, and they were perfect for wagons crossing them. Unfortunately, when you look at them now, of course they don't look that ideal for wagons. They actually look they could even look inconvenient or not comfortable at all. But that's because thousands of years have passed. You have to imagine that back then they would have been really polished and smooth. Alright, that is the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content from the Metatron. And as always, remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Valete!